Okay, this video tutorial is just to go over the CubeFace project. So I'll start in Photoshop. So I'm going to open up the CubeFace image that I've drawn. So let me just find that. I'll just open that into Photoshop. And then I'll just go through a few of the stages that we did in class, just as an introduction to Photoshop. I tend to use it as a paint package. And the thing I really want to highlight is how useful the layers are. So if you're using those already, that's great. Just a quick overview. You've got different kind of interface layouts. So in Window here, you've got Workspace, and I've got it set to Essentials. So if your default workspace is looking different, just check this. I've also hidden away the library thing over on the right hand side here, like this thing here, which has shortcuts to tutorials and so on. So you can just click on these arrows to get rid of this. You can bring up new things in the Window tab by just turning these things on and off, and it will bring up these things, and you can drag and drop them onto these layouts here. So you can stack them up as tabs if you want to. But this layout's okay. You can see mine's a little bit custom. I've got the History tab here, so under Windows here, I've got History turned on, and then I dragged it over here. This just gives a stack of commands that I do. I kind of like it. I was used to using Photoshop without unlimited undos, which it seems to have now. So I still use this a little bit. This is almost like an undo function. So let's get started on this. First of all, I've got my image. You can see over here on the layers, I've got this background image. I'm going to make a copy of this by dragging this onto this icon here. Okay, now this icon creates a new layer, but if you drag an existing layer onto it, it makes a copy of it. So I've got two copies of this. I'm going to hide my background away by clicking on the eye icon here, and I'm going to work with this one here. Okay, so at the moment I've got this image. I don't want to draw on this because if I then want to make amendments to it, I might remove some of my pencil lines. Okay, so I'm going to create another layer underneath that. So if I click on the hidden background and click on new layer, it makes a new layer above it. So whenever you click on new layer, it makes a new layer above the selected existing layer. Okay, and you can see this is sort of a checker gray grid. If I turn off my background copy, this is what it looks like. And in Photoshop, this means it's transparent. Okay, it's almost like an acetate clear film if you were working with physical media. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make my background copy so the white is invisible. Now this is a bit murky at the moment. If you've photographed it using your phone, you might find the white's not that white, and so it will mean it's a little bit murky when you start to color it in. So I can just adjust this by image adjustments. I've got some auto adjustments here. You can always try those. Worth trying them, see what the results are like. But I'm going to just use a simple tool called brightness and contrast. Levels is quite good. That gives you a little bit more control, but I'm just going to use this. And in here, I'm just going to make it a little bit lighter. And let's just have a look at the contrast. Just knock that down a bit. That's fine. I don't want to lose my pencil lines, but I just want to lighten the whiteness a bit. And I'll OK that. And then what I'm going to do to make the white transparent, just on my layers here, I'm going to go to normal. And I'm going to change this to multiply. Okay, so we don't see any effect at the moment, but when I fill this with a color, it will make an effect. So I'm just going to choose a sort of cartoon skin tone. So this one here, I've got my color set to swatches. I tend to just use these, and then I can adjust them later on in Photoshop. So I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to go over here, and this is my paint bucket tool. By default, it's set to gradient, but look, underneath this is paint bucket. That's also the G key. You press G or Shift G to toggle through what's underneath it. And if I just fill this with a color, you can see it's affected layer 1, but I can see that color through onto background copy. If I change this back to normal, you'll see, look, and you can see different effects when I go through all the different kind of mixing techniques here. So I'm just going to leave it on multiply. And so I've put my skin tone in, and then I can just start to color in. What I tend to do is I work on different layers. It just means that you can easily edit those layers. So I'm going to now make another layer above layer 1, and I'm going to paint the hair. I'm going to do this using the poly lasso tool. So over here, look, underneath the lasso tool is the polygon lasso tool, and it just means that I can click and release. And I'm just going to mask around the hair, and I like using this for just blocking out quick sections of color. If I was doing this properly, I'd probably spend a bit of a long time masking this off, but I can tweak this later on using, for example, the smudge tool is quite good if I want to sort of feather the edges a little bit. But I'm just drawing around this like so, and I'm going well outside the grid here, or the UV layout. Any colours that appear outside of the sort of origami cube won't appear on the cube. And when you get to the end, look, you can either try and join it up, a little circle appears, or just press enter. And look, we've got this selection area now, and I've got my new layer. I'll choose a bright bold colour, and I'm going to press the G key. That brings up the paintbrush. If it doesn't, look, Shift G will toggle through the different things. Okay, you can see that icon changing as I press Shift G. Okay, so this is the one we want, and I fill that color. And then to get rid of this selection, I'm going to press Control D. Okay, and that's a kind of universal Windows shortcut key. So Control D always gets rid of selections. Control A is usually select all. And you can see if I press Control A, you can see that this marquee selection around the whole image. Control D will get rid of it. Now this is the good thing about layers. Okay, if an art director walks over now and says, I don't like the color of that hair, I can quickly change it by either filling it with a new color, or I could go to Image, Adjustments, and Hue Saturation. Okay, lots of other things in here, but hue saturation is quite good. We've got a hue control, which cycles through different RGB values, like this. And then we've got a saturation level, so we can reduce the richness of the color, and we've got a lightness that does exactly what it says. So we can change this. We could make it, lighter. We could make it bright green if we wanted. We could make it kind of, if we go over here somewhere, we could make it more of a blonde color, and so on. And if you wanted like a brown, if you take it over into sort of a reddish kind of color, knock the saturation right down, that's when you start to get more of a brown color. Okay, so the hue and saturation is quite useful. I'm going to cancel that. I'm quite happy with this kind of bright red hair. I'll look at creating another layer now. You can organize your layers. You can actually rename them. You can drag them around if you want to change where they are. So like if I wanted to put this one down here, you can see suddenly the skin tone obscures the hair. I can drag it back up again and get that in the right order. You can also double click just on the type, and you can just type in custom names for your layers. So I'll call this one hair, and the other one I've called skin. So it just helps you understand which layer is which. So I'm going to create another layer just above skin here. Click on that, and I'm going to zoom in on the character's face. So I'm going to press the Z key. That brings up my zoom tool like so. You can use the H key as well just to drag this around. Look, you can see you get this little zoom selection if I'm zoomed in. I can just move into this area to focus on that area. The other hotkeys are Control. Holding Control down with plus and minus will zoom in and out as well. So like this. Okay. So the plus and the minus keys are up near your delete key. Okay. And yeah, I'm just going to add some color to the face, just some simple color. So I'm going to press B for my brush tool. You've got opacity and flow up here. They determine the strength and the transparency of what you're doing. I tend to just use one or the other, but play about them, see how you get on. I'm going to choose white from my swatch panel. You can use the bracket keys next to the enter keys to make your brush smaller and bigger. And I'm just going to put some color there, or some white there and there. I'm then going to make him look a bit tired and muck about with the opacity on layers. So I'm going to create another layer like this. I'm deliberately going to put this layer kind of in the wrong place, so we rearrange it. I'm going to choose a big bright red. I'm going to use a softer brush, so I'm going to go up here to a soft round, like so. Click up here just to get rid of that brush tool. If you click on the actual image, it will start to use the brush tool. So I wanted to get rid of this, so just clicking up here will get rid of it. And then I'm going to make the brush nice and big. Now this is going to look a bit mad, like so, and there. I'll give them a bit of a cold as well. So this obviously looks a bit intense. So first of all, I need to get the layer order correct. Okay, so the eyes, which are on layer 1, need to be dragged above layer 2. So that's better for starters. I'll double click on layer 1 and call it eyes. And I'll double click this and call it, I don't know, eye sockets. That will do. And then what I want to do, that red is too intense. So I'm just going to use the opacity here to adjust that red. And that just makes it more transparent. So you can sort of blend the colors together a little bit using the opacity. Okay, so that's just knocked that down to 27%. Okay. Next thing I'll do, I'll give him a bit of stubble. So I'll create a layer here. I'll double click on that and call it stubble, like so. And I'm going to use the polygon lasso tool again. I'm just going to draw an area around where he might have kind of a 5 o'clock shadow or 6 o'clock shadow, or whatever you call it. I can't remember what you call it. Like that. Press enter to join that. And I'm going to fill this with quite a rich color. I tend to not use grays or blacks, and nothing against them. It's just that you won't have any kind of saturation or hue control over them. So if you choose a color like this, so it looks bright and bold to start off with. So I'll press the G key to bring up my brush tool, and I'll fill that. I'll press Control D to get rid of that selection. I've got that layer in the right place. So obviously this color is way too intense at the moment. But then again, I can go back to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and I can muck about with it here if I want to. Okay, so I can change the hue of that if I want to here, but I can also just knock the opacity back here, and you'll see the effect it has. It just makes this a lot more subtle, and once you've knocked it right back like this, it's almost a kind of grey tone, but it's just got a little bit of colour in it, which means that you can muck about with that hue level to just tweak it a little bit more if you want to. Okay, if you want the edges to be a bit more blurred, up here under filter, there's a load of filtering techniques. One of them is called Gaussian blur. If I turn that one on, look, we've got this adjustment here. Okay, so we have a look. It will just blur the edges of it a little bit if that's the effect you want. It's just another tool in Maya. Okay, I'll zoom out, so Control minus, just zoom out like this so I can just see the whole image. This is looking okay. It's nice and simple. So all I've shown you there is just how to use layers, basically. Over here are lots and lots of tools. There's a marquee selection tool. I'll show you that in a bit. But under here, some good tools here. You've got like the smudge tool, the blur, and the sharpen tool. The smudge tool is quite good. I think I mentioned that about if you want to refine the edges here. Say, look, if I go to the hair layer, I can use this tool. I can't remember what the hotkey is for it. I think it's not the S key, it's not the D key. I can't remember what the hotkey is for that. I'll have to look that up. But then I use the bracket keys, and if you just look, you can just see that smudging it, and you've got a strength layer here, strength control here, sorry, that you can smudge these things. If you wanted to make the hair more refined, look, you can start to smudge these things in like so. So that's one way of sort of refining an edge if you want to. Okay, you can obviously use the brush tool rather than the poly lasso tool to do the hairline and so on. But the smudge key is quite good for blending things together. Now looking over here, we have got undo, so Control Z will undo, and I think it's got infinite undos in Photoshop now. I think that's been in there for a couple of years now. But if ever you want to get to a certain point, you can see my history here. I can go back to certain points in it, and I can see where I was with the image. Okay, so that can be quite useful as well. Okay, what I'm going to do, the final thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to get rid of some of these lines because these lines will show up on the polygon cube. So if we go around, go to background copy, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hide everything because if I use the eraser on them, I don't think the white is that white, so it will just show up a bit. So I'm going to use the I button, hold the I button down, and look, I'm just going to use the dropper tool just to select that white. And I mean, it looks white, but it might be a slight off-white. Then I'm going to press B to bring up the brush tool, make it a bit smaller, and look, I'm just going to get rid of these lines. Okay, so I'm just doing this. And just here, quick, I'm just doing this quickly. You can obviously spend a lot more time refining this if you want to. I'm just going to get rid of these, as many of these lines as I can, because like I said, they will show up on the polygon cube. You could probably just drag a slightly bigger brush around all of these areas, but you get the idea. Okay, so I'll just do these. I'll leave the rest of them on so you can actually see them. So that'll do. I'll unhide all of these. I've got rid of the lines that I want just for this test. Okay, and I zoom out again. Okay, and then what we're going to do, we're going to resize and save this. Okay, and we want to crop it as well. So let me just bring up the marquee tool, this one here, And look, I'm just going to drag a selection box from here to those crop marks that I've put on like that. Okay, and then I'm just going to go image and crop. I'm then going to go image and image size. And in here, I'm going to change a few things because we're working on screen-based media. I'm going to change this to pixels. So this is the number of dots across by the number of dots up. Okay, and the resolution, we leave that set to 72. You only really want to adjust this if you're doing printing. So you need a higher number for printing it. It relates to DPI, which is dots per inch or pixels per inch. And yeah, if you wanted to print this image, you'd need that higher. But for screen-based stuff, 72 is fine. You can adjust the size. If you've photographed this and the image is sort of 10,000 pixels by whatever, 10,000 pixels, you might want to reduce it down to sort of below 2,000. Mine is just over 1K in size. Okay, the little anchor here, this just makes sure it keeps the aspect ratio. So any changes I make to this will update the height, so it keeps the size of the image relative. Okay, so if I knock this down to say just 1,000, you can see it updates the height to 995. So it's almost a square image. Once you're happy with that, just go OK, and that will resize your image like so. Then we're going to save it. So we go File, Save As. You'll want two versions of this. You'll want to save one as the default PSD because PSD files keep all your layers. And that's your working file that you can go back to and make adjustments to. Okay, so I'd save this as a PSD. So I'd go, let's give it a different name. We just call it Test01. Like so, and we save that as a PSD. And just go OK to that. And then we're going to save it as a JPEG. So File, Save As. We'll just wait, it's still saving. We then go File, Save As. And then we'll save this to a JPEG. Sorry, my machine's running a little bit slow because the video capture software makes it run a little bit slow. So I've now set this to JPEG. Okay, now be careful of JPEGs, they will compress all your layers into one. It's a much smaller file size, and the quality is a little bit poor with some JPEGs. You'll hardly notice it, but it's got compression on it, so it keeps the file sizes small. So sometimes the quality is not so great, but it's good just for what we're doing in Maya. So I'm going to save this as Test01 JPEG, save it, and it'll come up with an option in a moment. Quality, let's keep it high, and baseline standard. I don't know what these things mean, to be honest, but that one always works in Maya. So we go, OK. So we've done our image. Next thing, we'll apply it to Maya.